Well, I'm fired up on this Monday morning because there is a lot of reason for optimism out there. I understand that there are the usual doom and gloomers afoot, that they will stalk across your social media feeds and tell you that the world is an awful place and that America is in trouble and things are inevitably always going to be awful. You know who those people are. You know how to find them. Hopefully most of you do not follow them. But there is reason for a lot of optimism if you are a sports fan starting off this week. First of all, NASCAR had fans in the stands again for a race this Sunday down in Texas. You'll remember that on Wednesday they had fans in the stands at Bristol. I don't know why this isn't getting more attention, because we haven't had tens of thousands of fans in the stands since all the way back when the NBA shut down and all of the different sports leagues shut down in the NCAA basketball region as well. And we are now poised, as we get ready for this week, to officially have sports come roaring back. The NBA bubble is underway, and by and large, most things seem to be going pretty smooth down in the bubble. You've got Major League Baseball, which is officially going to start on Thursday and be underway for a 60-game season. You have got the UFC, NASCAR, as I just mentioned, the PGA, which is going on and doesn't seem to have had any major issues of late. And you are seeing the overall positivity rates rolling down for college football teams across America. On top of that, you also now are beginning to have NFL players poised to return to get ready for training camp. Now, we are going to talk some about this issue. Dr. David Chow has got an article up at OutKick.com that I would encourage you to read. There is some fighting going on. A lot of players took to the social media streets in the NFL on Sunday to argue that they're not happy with all the health procedures and protocols that are in place. But by and large, it seems as if most of the issues are boiling down to whether or not there will be preseason games played or not. I don't really see the argument for why we need NFL preseason games at all, period. Even when there was no coronavirus, even when there were no health concerns, sitting here speaking as an NFL season ticket holder, I've always found it ridiculous that I have to pay full price for two games that I can't even give the tickets away for, right? It's fun. I love the NFL. I love football. If you listen to this show, you know I love talking about football. I'm ecstatic for all of it to be back. I'm ecstatic for all sports to be back. Trust me, anybody out there who is in my line of work that has hardly taken a day off since March when sports shut down, the idea that come Thursday we've got Major League Baseball coming back, and then next week that we're going to have the NBA and the NHL back, and that we're going to have the busiest August and September in sports in the history of sports. Not even an exaggeration, not hyperbole. We are headed for the biggest September and the biggest August in terms of events, in terms of available viewing options that we have ever seen. So there are a lot of reasons for optimism, but I kind of wish that the NFL preseason didn't exist. And the argument that I've been making, and if you listen to this show, you've heard it a lot. The argument I have made for years is college football players go, some of them do, from playing in high school football games to playing in massively monumental opening games of the season for their respective college football teams without a single preseason game. So why, if all these college teams can go from never having played a real game at even the college level, a lot of freshmen go out on the field for the first time in a really big game that matters. Why, if they can all do this, are we in a position where the NFL ever needed 4 preseason games? And so I don't really care about this dispute. I don't really care about this argument in general. And I think the larger context is even the NFL players and owners, because of what happened with baseball, they don't want to create a huge stir. I could be wrong about this, but this seems to me to be primarily focused on whether or not any preseason football games will exist. Now, while I'm generally anti the idea of NFL preseason games, Right now, we're down to games that would theoretically only be played in week 2 and week 3. This year is a bit different in that there are going to be many very different regulations as it pertains to what games look like in a coronavirus era. And so I think there are many of you out there who are like me, where you may be opposed to the preseason, but also somewhat sympathetic to the idea of, okay, what are the games going to look like? What are the procedures going to be like? It's almost like even if you don't need a game, and I don't necessarily think you need a game, you need a really aggressive dress rehearsal. What is the stadium going to look like? Where are the players? How are the players going to get their uniforms? What's the field going to look like? And remember, I floated this out there a little while ago, and I think a lot of you agreed with it. I would do away, because I think already we know. What do we know about what an NFL stadium is going to look like? We know that, I think it's the first 6 or 8 rows they've already said are not going to be allowed to be occupied by fans. And we know that the stadium itself is going to have way fewer fans, if any fans at all, are going to be allowed in there. Maybe NASCAR can be a precedent because NASCAR has had crowds in Bristol and they had crowds down at the Texas Motor Speedway now, and it doesn't seem like that provoked very much of a negative reaction. So maybe a small number of fans are going to be able to get into the stadium. But to me, the biggest issue that needs to be determined for the NFL is I would do away with all pregame festivities. And I've been going to NFL games for years, so I know exactly what they're like typically. You have the flyover with the Jets. You have the national anthem being sung, fireworks going off. You have the cheerleaders on the field, all the photographers, all of the additional VIPs, let's call them, that are allowed to walk around on the field with thanks to their field passes, all of the people that are involved in media. There's a lot of people on the field at an NFL game that don't have anything to actually do with the playing of the NFL game. If I were in charge of NFL-related experience this year, I would say, and by the way, we know we've already gotten some attention on, for instance, jersey exchanges not potentially being allowed. But here's what I would say. I would say no pomp, no circumstance, no fluff, just the game. And I mean, I understand that some people are going to get mad. I wouldn't allow anybody to come sing the national anthem. I wouldn't allow any peewee football teams to play at halftime. I wouldn't do the halftime contest. I wouldn't do the photographers everywhere. I'd only have 1 or 2 photographers, and I'm not even sure if I'd give them access to the field. I wouldn't allow fraternization between players and coaches at all. I would totally limit the field to players, coaches, and the training staff, the medical community. Otherwise, nobody there. I would probably limit the number of cameramen that we had in some way, and I would go with just the game. Players come out, maybe not even for the coin toss. Maybe we do the coin toss without needing the players together at midfield. Home team gets the choice of whether or not to get the ball all season. I mean, think about it. Do you really need to toss a coin? Give the home field team the choice. Do you want the ball to start the first half or to start the second half? That's the advantage of being the home team. Usually you also have a home field advantage. That's not going to exist this year. You don't even need the players out gathering for the coin toss. Just let everybody come out for the opening kickoff. And if players want to make a statement, somebody email me this. I think it's an interesting idea. You can play the national anthem before the players come out. Just play it, right? You don't need to have a singer. You don't need to have somebody there. Just play the national anthem. And if players really want to make a statement, they can take a knee before the opening kick. Everybody who comes out to receive, to kick the ball, they can all take a knee together for 30 seconds or whatever they want to do, and then boom, we kick the ball off. That seems like a pretty good way to start the NFL season. And I would go ahead with that process in place all year, and I would say, look, because of the coronavirus, we're limiting the number of people who have access to the field, whether you're a cheerleader, whether you're a kid that would otherwise be playing, they sometimes bring out the little kids and let them play at halftime, whether you're somebody who does a halftime contest, whether you are somebody who usually gets introduced on the field, I would do away with it all, and I wouldn't play any preseason games. I would do an aggressive walkthrough where everybody has to be there, everybody has to understand exactly what the process is like, and to me, that would be a solution that helps to resolve this larger issue. But the big takeaway here, and the reason why I think all of you should be incredibly optimistic as you start off your Mondays, is because things are moving in a very positive direction in the world of sports. And I believe all sports are going to be back in some form or fashion by next week. I really do. I think you're going to have, whatever your sport is, there will be players in NFL training camps, certainly by next week. There will be NBA games preparing to happen. There will be NHL games underway. There will be Major League Baseball games, MLS, PGA, NASCAR, UFC. Our long national sports-free nightmare is going to be over, and we're actually going to be deluged with so much sports you're not going to know what to do. There are going to be so many games on every night, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, that you are not even going to be able to choose which sport to watch because everything's going to be out of whack, because usually in July, late July, early August, it's pretty quiet. Instead, we're going to have the busiest late July, August, and September that you've ever seen. And if you're a gambler like me, you're never going to have had more games to think about. And I'll be honest with you, I have clicked so often on a Scores app and had it just continue to rotate through because there's no sports there to check the score on. I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to pick up my phone and instead of looking at coronavirus cases to see the latest for the day, to be able to click on sports scores and have them all pop up. Now, I do want to give you something positive on the coronavirus too, and I wrote about this at OutKick.com. I'd encourage you guys to all go check it out. The worst case scenarios on the coronavirus are now, in my opinion, based on the data, no longer as bad as they used to be. If you look at the numbers, Florida, Arizona, Texas, California, I know you have a lot of people out there listening to me in all those different states right now as we are rolling through the start of the show. The worst case scenarios have not yet come anywhere near happening, even as the number of cases have skyrocketed in those locations. In fact, it would not be stunning if in the next 10 to 14 days, Florida and Texas both have more confirmed cases than New York. Yet the death rate in Florida and in Texas is 1/10 the death rate that New York and New Jersey and other northeastern states had. I'm not an expert on why that exactly is. I think one reason is the people who are getting sick now are younger, but I also think that our overall ability to treat the coronavirus has gotten a lot better, and that people who were getting sick and dying in March and April are now getting sick and getting back well. But I'm stunned that I shouldn't say I'm stunned, because one of the reasons why we have developed such a huge audience, even without sports going on, is because so many of you crave authenticity and somebody just being honest with you. So I shouldn't say I'm stunned by this, but if you actually look at the data, the death rate in Florida and Texas combined is 1/10 the death rate that the state of New York and New Jersey had back in March and April. So all of those things are moving in a positive direction as well. And I wrote this, and a lot of people were like, oh my God, are you kidding? This can't possibly be true. But it is if you look at the data. If you look at the data right now, in order to equal the same situation with what happened in New York, it would have to be 300 straight days of 10,000 plus cases per day in Florida. 300 straight days in order for the death rate to be the same in Florida as it is New York. And those two states are similar in population. Florida has a few more people. And in Texas, it would take over a year of 10,000 plus days of cases occurring in order for Texas to equal where New York is right now. Now, I'm not saying don't make smart decisions, don't social distance, listen to people in their respective businesses if they're asking you to do things in order to shop there. I've said before, I'm not going to be the person who throws a fit if in order to go in Costco, I have to put a mask on. I'm going to put a mask on. It's not like the Costco workers are there to try and make my day miserable, or Walmart or Lowe's or wherever you may be across the country. If that's the requirement, Kroger, then I'm going to go ahead and put a mask on and not throw a fit about it. I understand that some of you disagree with the whole mask wearing requirement. I think there are many different things that have gone on around the coronavirus that haven't made sense. My biggest issue is the difference between essential and non-essential businesses. And if you listen to this program, you know that I had that epiphany when I had a birthday back in April during the middle of the coronavirus, and someone delivered cupcakes to my house. And I appreciate my agent, Nick Kahn, fabulous guy at CAA. I appreciate him getting me cupcakes sent, his assistant, not Nick, but his assistant, whoever took care of that at CAA. I appreciate it. But my God, when the doorbell rings and I go to the front door and I get cupcakes and I say, man, you guys are open? And the cupcake lady says, yeah, we're an essential business. And then come to find out that every ice cream store was also considered an essential business. There was a lot of mess in our rules. So I'm not saying our rules have been flawless, far from it. And I am of the opinion, as a business owner myself, that there is not a distinction between an essential and non-essential businesses, because if you own a business, all businesses are essential. And if you work at a business, all businesses are essential as well. So I think one of the big flaws of our entire response has been this idea that there are essential and non-essential businesses. They are all essential. But what I'm here to tell you is we are coming through the worst of this. And things are getting better. Whether the doom and gloomers, the Corona bros, the fear porn embracers want to believe it, and sports is coming back in a big way, and all of us should be ecstatic about it because we are poised for one of the greatest runs in the history of sports. All of September, all of August, on into the fall, we are going to have more sports going on than we have ever had before in the history of this country. And I just want you to pause a little bit, put a little bit of a smile on your face. I know Mondays are not necessarily anybody's favorite day. If you don't love your jobs, you're in your car, you're listening to the podcast, you're on your way to work, I want you to just pause for a minute and think about what August and September are going to be like and what it's going to feel like when Major League Baseball comes roaring back on Thursday, followed by the NBA, followed by the NHL. All of that is coming back sooner rather than later.